Hi, I'm Mark Hill, and welcome to Small Expressions, a place where children have a very powerful voice. I'm here today with Pastor Jerome Hill of the Faith Family Church here at Nashville, Tennessee. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir.
So let's sit back, relax, and start the show. All right, Mr. Hill, you tell us a little something about yourself for all our viewers out here today?
Well, my name is Jerome Hill Sr. I was raised in South Nashville, better known as Woodbine. Pastor Family of Faith Church, 106 Joyner Avenue.
Okay. Well, today's show, we're going to talk about discipline, a subject that's pretty much needed in today's society. So much is going on with our young people. Mr. Hill, can you tell me, in your own words, what do you define as discipline?
As far as discipline, I see as training to conform to different types of rules. Training means to be repetitious. The Bible says in Proverbs 22, verse 6, train up a child in the way that he should go, and then when he is old, he will not depart from that. So children need a lot of repetition in their life as far as training.
Okay. So let me ask you this. Compared to, your generation when you was younger, a younger man, younger boy.
How old do you think I am?
You're 22, right?
22 plus
22
30.
Plus. Right.
Yeah,
Look,
22 plus.
when you were small, the discipline that you received, and even in, my time,
Right.
what would you say are the differences how people are raising their children today compared to, a long time ago?
Well, I think that kids today are exposed to a lot more things than we were back in the day. I think we were basically raised by our neighborhoods. Today, parents, they get in trouble when they try to discipline other kids in the neighborhood.
I've heard that.
You heard that before?
Yes, I've heard that.
And so, back in the day, my mom would have probably been in jail today because my mom disciplined me, raised me up in a godly way, and discipline, whoopings was just a thing that was a part of my upbringing. Right. And I remember having to go outside and get the switches.
Oh, that's the, what do they say that in prison, dead man walking?
Dead man walking.
Right. When I was a little boy and I got in trouble for doing whatever I wasn't supposed to do, I was thinking that, my mother, my grandmother, my father, whoever was, getting ready to do it to me like that.
Right.
I'm like, why they're so mean?
Right.
But as I look, back upon my life and even up to where I am in life now,
Right.
I thank them for that because that kept me out the jailhouse and that kept me out of a lot of trouble. So going on with discipline, do you think discipline not only is a way of chastising your child to get them conform to how you run your household and even society? Do you think that helps with their self-esteem, helps with their building and growing process?
I think it helps. Discipline has to do a lot with love, because a lot of times there's no love in discipline. It's just that someone is getting beaten. I know of a minister that used to do counseling in the Department of Corrections.
Right.
And he said he talked to a lot of guys who was locked up, and they would tell him it was not that they didn't receive whoopings, because they received whoopings as far as growing up, but they mentioned that they were not loved in the home. Right. And that's what's missing in a lot of discipline, because one thing you have to do with kids, once you discipline them, before you discipline them, after you discipline them, you have to let them know that they are loved. Correct.
I absolutely agree with that. Even going on a side note, when I was in the military, I had the rank of sergeant. I had soldiers I had to counsel, and sometimes, some of the counseling weren't always positive.
Right.
But towards the end of it all, I always ended on a positive note, like, I know you can do better. I've seen you do better. Right. I'm going to uphold you to a higher standard. Right. And I think going along with what you're saying, because I used to get this too. I never could understand as a child. I get my butt spanked, and later on my mama or grandma come hug me and console me, talking about, you know, they didn't want to do it, but I did something wrong, and they explained to me what I did wrong.
Right.
I'm starting to see, especially with a lot of younger people nowadays, the blurred line between what is correct by what the law says. Because, you know, if you go on a biblical sense, they say well, you're not only bound by the laws of God, you're bound by the laws of man as well. Right. I'm starting to see, when I hear them talk, they don't seem to understand what is the subtle differences between what is correct versus their idea of what is correct. I mean, because is it not enough discipline or the wrong type of discipline they're receiving?
Well, sometimes it's not even the discipline that kids receive. Sometimes it's what they are exposed to when they are not around their parents.
Right.
As far as school, as far as in the neighborhoods, the things that kids today are exposed to a lot of technology.
True.
When I was coming up, I remember TV going off at 10:30 at night, and we would stand up and salute, and you know, the national anthem.
Right, the flag be flying.
The flag be flying, and so that's how we ended. You know, that your night was over then.
Right.
And so I remember those days, and then coming up, just 52 now, but as a young man.
Oh, 52? I thought you were 22.
Oh, I'm sorry, 52. I remember the days in which we only had Channel 2,
right.
Channel 4, Channel 5, Channel 8, and if you had the rabbit antennas, you had Channel 17.
Well, see, I guess I lucked up because I came to the age of movie channel HBO.
Wow.
When it first came on the air.
Wow.
You know, and we was always, like, if I spent the night at my cousin's house, he had all the cable channels. So, you know, we stay up late night and watch all the other stuff we ain't supposed to be watching.
Right.
But, you know, his mom got a hold, we got in trouble.
Right.
But speaking of that, now you talking about school now. Even like when I was in high school in the 80s, okay, and I remember one time, I think I might have showed up to class one too many times late, and they gave me the option of detention or the paddling.
Right.
Do you think that corporal punishment for school system, do you think that should come back, that deter some of the negativity we hear of what's going on in school systems now? Or should that be something the parents themselves should truly enforce?
I think you have to have a balance. The world has changed over the years, and like I mentioned earlier, there was a time that parents, even teachers, were more caring as far as in the neighborhoods and in the schools, and so you knew that your teachers, administrators love the kids.
Right.
But now, because of society and all the issues and problems that even teachers, administrators are having, and lawsuits.
Right.
Lawsuits have caused there to be a difference as far as discipline, because a lot of parents, they are suing school systems now, and a lot of times there's abuse in the home.
Right.
There's abuse as far as in the schools, and so we have to be very cautious as far as returning corporal punishment in our school system.
Right, because the one thing I've seen as of late, I've seen some parents, they'll sit back and defend their children, which a parent should defend their child. Right. That is their child. Right. But please understand, if your child is wrong, and somebody else notices that and they call them out on that, I see a lot of parents get defensive, like, oh, my child wouldn't do that. I have a good child. But I think the thing that a lot of parents fail to realize, they're a different person outside that home.
Right.
And what do you think are some things that a parent should take in consideration when it comes down to that subject right there?
Well, I think parents need to be more involved in the lives of their children. I had my youngest son played sports, played football at a local high school and middle school, and there were not many parents that were involved as far as visibly present during practice, even at the games.
Right.
And so when I would go to games and I see a lot of young people dropped off at games, their parents did not know what they were doing at the games, before, during, after the games. Some parents did not know what their kids were doing before football practice, after football practice. Kids was basically raising themselves. Right,
and that is a strong bone of contempt in our society these days. But my question is, do you think that because, nowadays you have a single parent home versus you have a dual parent home like it used to be, that the parents' workload is so heavy they don't have time to accommodate their child's activities? Or do you also think there's a strong disconnect altogether with the parent and the child?
I think there's a disconnect, number one, with God, and then there's a disconnect with, as far as parents. I was raised in a single home, raised by my mom, but my mom put the fear of God in me.
Right.
And that even when my mom was not around, I still could hear my mama's voice. And I knew right from wrong.
Right.
I always tell people, growing up, it wasn't that I had a problem with ever getting in trouble going to jail. I just never wanted to have to call my mama.
Right.
Because I knew my mama would give me a beat down.
Right.
So I never got any trouble as far as going to jail, because I did not want to have to call my mother if I got in trouble. So there was a reverence for God, number one, and then a reverence for my mom as far as honoring her.
Right.
Because the Bible says that we are to honor our mother and father, that our days may be long upon the earth. That's the first commandment with a promise.
Right.
And I believe that's why a lot of young people are dying early, because they're not honoring their mother and their father.
Right. This is so true. Expounding on that note right there, the problems you see with young people nowadays, I'm talking about, almost to the point they're at the end of their teenage years, going into young adults. I see a lot of them committing crimes and committing acts that wind them up in jail and in the prisons that you would figure somebody like 45 years old or greater would be committing. And they're doing it at such a younger age. I mean, they're even starting around as 12, because you look at some of the news articles, you've seen children shoot other children in schools and stuff.
Right.
So I guess my next question is, what is the base root of all that type of behavior coming out of the young people nowadays? Do you think, like you said, the disconnect with parents and God?
Right.
Let me ask you this, where do you think the media plays into this as well?
Well, I am a volunteer chaplain with the Metropolitan Nashville Police Department. And one of the requirements is that we have to do a ride-along with a policeman. I had an opportunity to do a ride-along with a policeman, and as we was riding, he was talking to me about a time when a young man walked into this video store and just point blank shot the store clerk in the forehead. And they said he just walked out like it was nothing. And this policeman believed that these young people get sensitized by videos, and they try to act out the plan of the games. This young police officer told me he was in the Air Force, and they would always, watch the simulators and see how to do a certain maneuver.
Right.
And so they had to go over it, the kill shot.
Right.
And so he said, we got so sensitized, I pray that's the right word, and we just thought we was just acting out, playing a video game.
Right.
As far as carrying out our military duties. He said he believed that's one of the problems with a lot of young people. They are using violent video games, and they don't know the difference between real and fiction. Right.
That is so true, because when I was a teenager, especially going into my early teens, you had the Atari, ColecoVision, and all that when it first came out. But even still, in that day and era, I still went outside. I played with my friends. I played with my relatives and stuff like that. Nowadays, you have children inside entertaining themselves with a video game. I'm not saying anything wrong with the video game industry. I mean, I like video games myself, but there is no longer a balance. And it's because nowadays, it's we as parents wondering if it's safe to let our children outside. So with that being said, do you think that we as parents, we should make a bigger effort to secure our households to where there is a balance. Your children should be able to go outside, get some exercise, play a little bit, and actually experience the world versus just being a prisoner in your own house? What is the role a parent should be able to do with that?
Well, I think there should be a balance. There's some things that you're only going to learn from being inside, and some things you learn from outside. When I was coming up, we spent majority of our days outside, you know, playing. Well, we didn't have the video games,
Right.
like kids do today, but there needs to be a balance, and the balance is parents knowing exactly what their kids are doing, even when they're not around. It's just like when I would drop my kids off at the mall and told them, or a football game, basketball game, and told them I would be back at a certain time.
Right.
But many times I came back early.
Right.
I came back early
Right.
because I wanted to see what they were doing before I got there.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, my mother did that to my brother one time when he was still in high school. He was getting all these reports saying he was being too talkative in class.
Right.
And of course, my brother, like, oh, you're lying on me. They're not doing that, you know.
Right.
Not doing that. So one day she showed up to class and caught my brother in the act.
Right.
And, you know, yeah, she disciplined him right on the spot. I'm glad it wasn't me. I'd been super embarrassed.
Well, I got disciplined at school one time.
Oh, yeah. You know, my mom showed up one time with rolls on her head. I don't want to talk about that. But, okay. So speaking about that, how do you feel? What's your thoughts on people, young people, just having children way too young? Because not saying that everybody's story is going to end out the same. My mother had me young too,
Right.
but like I said, that was a different era.
Right.
You know, you still had, you know, the remnants of the old ways around. Okay, but nowadays, you know, you see, you know, girls as young as 12
Right.
becoming mothers, and that in themselves, they're a child as well, trying to raise a child. What are your thoughts on this? It's becoming an epidemic because now MTV has a show, 16 and Pregnant or something like that. Not so much glorifying, but it's just being brought to the attention. And my thing is, what can be done to curb that? Because I do believe the reason why a lot of these children are not as disciplined as we were coming up is because their mothers and their fathers are far too young. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that parents are not involved in their kids' lives, number one. Also, kids do not know the responsibility
Right.
of raising a child. And the thing is, we had a young lady or young girl, teenager in our church, 13 years old, pregnant, and just recently, now she's in her 20s now, but she said, this is my only child, because she realized that it was a great responsibility. And so she makes sure that she's preparing her daughter not to relive what she experienced in life, because she realizes it's a great responsibility. Now, kids, they're not responsible.
No.
It's the parents' fault, because parents are not teaching their kids as far as, well, that's just a sin. You know, that's just wrong.
Right.
As far as you, number one, having sex with a boy, and then number two, that you can't take care of yourself.
Right.
So how are you going to take care of a child?
Right. Right. So with that being said, because like I said, you know, growing up back in my time and your time, I said every year presence of us being in church. You know, a long time ago, like I said, not only you had fear of your mother or father and your elders, but also some of the people in your church
Right.
installed a good dose of fear. My question is, what is the role of the church in what's going on with the discipline of children nowadays? Because you got to understand, you know, the church was like almost like the second or third person in the lineup of who's going to get you right. So what do you feel is the role of the church in discipline of children these days?
The church just supposed to enhance or assist what's supposed to be going on in the home. The church is not to replace
Right.
what's going on in the home. Discipline is supposed to start in the home. That's the first place that a child is reared,
Right.
is in the home. But the church is just supposed to assist, be an outlet, to be an assistant as far as to the parents or whomever is raising the child, but not supposed to take the complete responsibility of raising children.
Right.
That discipline starts in the home. And I feel that churches have a part to play.
Yes.
Because of what we teach the parents and what we teach children. And so there's some things that parents ought to learn and put in practice in their homes in order to pass that down to their kids.
Right, right. So my next question is, at what age do we start holding our children accountable for their actions? You know, for example, seeing this on the educational side, by the time your child reaches high school, they're supposed to know how to read, write, and study their homework and do everything, you know, turn in their work assignments so they'll get the grade. At what age do we start saying, okay, I'm going to start easing up on the reins because I've got you in line to a degree, and now I'm going to start holding you accountable? What are the times we need to start looking at that?
Well, I think we as parents never get to the place where we stop speaking into the lives of our kids, even grown kids. But as far as accountability, we have to let our kids grow and to grow up. And some grow faster than others.
True.
And so we cannot even treat the kids that grow up in our home all the same.
Right.
Because some are more disciplined than others. And so what we have to do as parents, number one, we have to hear from the Lord.
Right.
And the Lord will tell us when that child is accountable, when that child knows his will, knows God's will for their life, and now they can get on and be accountable for their actions.
Right. So let's talk about curfew. I'm not from Nashville, so I'm still trying to learn the city. Is there a curfew here in Nashville?
My understanding, there is a curfew in Nashville, which is a good thing.
Right. Now, do you think it's being enforced? Because I'll play devil's advocate today. I have a job, and sometimes I work, you know, the late shift, and I'm coming home, and I'm seeing, you know, they're not grown people by the way they look. You see teenagers still walking the streets, and, you know, now that it got darker, you know, it's a little more dangerous for somebody to be out. And I was asking myself a few nights ago, like, is there a curfew or what? It's almost midnight, and I still see kids walking up and down the street. Yes, it's a weekend or whatnot, but still. Because I was coming out from Due West, and I saw, it was probably like 5 young black boys walking together, and I didn't know a cop was behind me, and I saw the lights go on, and it stopped where they were.
Right.
And I'm saying to myself, was he asking them, do they know about a curfew? Is it being enforced? What can be done about it?
Well, some kids have permission to be out past curfew because of job, because of other maybe responsibilities, and so they have permission to be out later than curfew. But curfew should be enforced by the parents. And policemen, they need to enforce it. If they see kids out, they need to check on them and see their reasoning for being out. And I don't think they need to give all kids citations or take them to jail or to juvenile because they are out late. Times have changed. And so some kids are responsible when they're out. Some are not as responsible. So what's your question again? Well, I'm trying to understand.
So, do you know, as far as the curfew law is concerned, is it something that has to be black and white by the law? And, you know what I'm saying, do we have to truly know as parents, you know, this is the time you have to be in, irregardless of work or whatnot? You know what I'm saying? Do we have to truly follow the law because of circumstance, or is that up to us as parents to kind of?
Well, the law should be followed. If it's a law on the books, in order to keep our kids off of the books, it's best to be enforced, or to just abide by that law.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. So my final question is, do you think that it could be a point of too much parenting, like too much discipline versus not enough? Do you think there's also an opposite of that as well?
Too much parenting?
Too much,
Well, it's according to how you define parenting, because the child can never be loved too much.
Right.
And so with love, that training, nurturing, the kids, they can never be loved too much.
I hear you.
And so just like these young kids, you can tell they are loved.
Oh, yes.
Because they have smiles on their faces, and you can tell their parents love them, And so you can't love them too much.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
That's true. Because the reason I asked that, because, you know, I've heard some people say, oh, my mom's too strict or my dad's too strict. And, you know that person generally, they don't seem like the type to get in trouble a whole lot. So, do you think that could be a point where a parent can be too strict and it's stifling a child's development, or that's just up to the parent's discretion?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily take too much stock in what the child says,
Right.
but more so in the parent.
Right.
Because a parent usually been there, done that.
It's
And
true.
so with the parent, they usually know best. And then sometimes what a child said they should get away with, I find them doing the same thing to their kids today.
Right. I see that. I see that in some kids, especially always the youngest ones.
Right.
They get away with bloody murder. My brother did. So, out of your own personal experience, what have you, as far as a parent, a word you can put out there for, people in television land that can help them with something, they're going through? What are some, words you can leave for them?
Something I could leave for them, the parents?
Mm-hmm.
But one thing, never give up on your kids. Never give up.
Right.
Always love your kids. Discipline your kids. Train them up. I was taught that kids who grow up in church, they finish school, they're very successful in life. And so to me, that's very important, to have a relationship with the Lord.
Right.
That's important. To honor your parents, to get the discipline that you need as a parent in order to discipline your kids.
Do you think that, especially with all the recent events, you're talking about taking, I've heard pledge allegiance out of schools, prayer in schools. What's your viewpoint on that? What they're doing nowadays for the students?
Well, I think it has something to do with discipline. I mean, it didn't stunt our growth.
Right.
And so we had an allegiance to America.
Right.
To respect America and what America stands for.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're one nation under God,
This is true.
which is important as a people, as far as Americans.
Right.
And so I think that it's something that still ought to go on.
Right. Because I do feel like that's something that needs to be replaced, because it's going on a little bit too much nowadays. Children just totally out of whack. Well, that's all the time we have for today. I'd like to thank you. My name is Mark Hill. Thank you for tuning in to Small Expressions, a place where kids have a very powerful voice. I'd like to thank our guest host here today, Jerome Hill. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you, Brother Mark.
And I want to say goodbye to everybody on the television side, and we'll see you again. Thank you.